Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone, whoever you are in the world. Right, here we are, this kind of part two of what is a Wrath of the Waits Whirly Barb Ren Barb guide. We went through the gear the other day, now we're going to go through the skills and passives of that piece of that spec or build. So, mainly, main mouse button, so left mouse button, Whirlwind Hurricane. Pull distant enemies towards you while whirlwinding pulls everything in together. Great. Um, you can use Dust Devils if you're doing a push build, but for speed and farm builds, such as Bounties or Nephilim Rifts, Hurricane works good. Works in synergy with everything else as well within the build, so we'll go through them. Sprint Marathon. Defensive right mouse button, just as an example what I use. So that, because we don't need to proc Bandamite for the 80% damage reduction just in like tier 16 Nephilims and Bounties, we don't really need anything to proc Bandamite, so we can use Sprint Marathon. I say the only reason I'm using it, Bandamite, is because I haven't got Rachel's Ring of Larceny yet for the extra speed, for speed runs. But for general rule of thumb, if you are pushing, Ground Stomp, and I would do Ground Stomp, Wrenching, Smash, pull enemies towards you so you can whirlwind round when group them up, kill them all really, really quickly. Well, that's the plan anyway. So if we go back to our passives there. So defensive, Ignore Pain, Ironhide, increases the duration of Ignore Pain. Also people using Battle Rage, can't remember which one it was. I think it was Frosty or Bloodshed, something like that. Not only does it increase damage, but it doubles your armor. I find Ignore Pain gives you more survivability personally, but it's personal preference there. Wrath of the Berserker, Insanity, obviously gain increased damage, doubles your toughness essentially as well, or nearly does. Rend, because we want to proc Rend with Bloodbath. Killing enemies causes nearby enemies to bleed. Extra damage when you're doing Whirlwinds, which is the mechanic which attacks with Rend. Warcry, Charge, Fury generated by Warcry. Keeps your Warcry up, your Fury generation up there, so you don't run out of resources, which your vital resource for doing attacks with, which is Fury. I say Whirlwind, even though it is a whirly bar with the Wrath of the Waste set, with the new procs that have happened, as I discussed yesterday, 2-piece increased damage per second by Ren by 500% and its duration by 15 seconds. 4-piece during Whirlwind, 3 seconds after you gain 50% damage reduction, applied Rend and deal triple damage. And then 6-piece, Whirlwind gains the effect of Dust Devil's Rune and Whirlwind and Rend damage increased by 10,000%. So here, for example, you don't even need to use Dust Devils, hence why I'm using, Whirlwind Hurricane, because you would do Dust Devils normally, but because it causes more aggro, makes more things attack you, but use Hurricane to pull them in for you along with Ground Stomp in a push situation. So pretty tough, it's pretty good going here. So as for the passive skills now, you can mess around with them quite a lot. Rampage is kind of a fundamental within the build. You can't really go without that. Increase strength by 1% for 8 seconds, great. Pound of Flesh, when you heal by a globe, gain 2% regeneration, and second and 4% increased movement speed for 15 seconds. This is more of a speed build proc, because I would happily switch this for Berserker Rage when you deal 25% additional damage while maximum Fury. And that would be, let's say, using Slanderer and Rogue, where you might have resource reduction issues, resource problems. So you can lose Berserker Rage as a push build instead of Pound of Flesh. Weapons Master, gain bonus damage based on weapon type. Your main hand weapon, for example, swords and daggers, 8% increased damage. Maces and axes, 5% increased damage. That would be, for example, if you're using Ingeom as a sword, but you're using Echo and Fury for the Fury regeneration to give you increased attack speed and movement speed. Again, that's how you'd want to do that, how you want to synergize the build completely. Again, you can replace that with Brawler. As long as there are 3 enemies within 12 yards, all your damage is increased by 20%. That's a great little proc. That's probably a little bit better than Weapons Master. Actually, you know what? I might switch that over now, just to see how it goes, because I'm still messing with it, testing. Finally, Bulkathosis, or the Boon of Bulkathos. So reduces cooldown of Call of the Ancients by 30 seconds and Wrath of the Berserker. Even though I'm using Wrath of the Berserker, I'm using Wrath of the Berserker with this build. Oh god, reduced by 30 seconds. Even though we've got an Obsidian Ring and a Zodiac in the queue, which every attack reduces your cooldown by 1 second, it's worth having that extra cooldown there. But we can switch that out as long as the mob density is good enough for Ruthless. You deal 40% damage, additional damage to enemies below 30% health. So there's a lot of switching around you can do here. I say Rampage is kind of a necessity within the build. I'm using Pound of Flesh for the movement speed, but you can swap that for Berserker for additional damage while near maximum fury. 25% additional damage, which is great. If you're, let's say, using Ambo Pride and Ingeom in your build, you've got a Furnace in the cube, so you're doing 50% extra damage to elites and bosses. The Berserker Rage would be great. As long as you can keep up that resource reduction of Fury above 90%, is it? Near maximum, so say 90%. See, I've just switched out Brawler into Brawler there, just because 3 enemies, there's always 3 enemies within 12 yards, damage increased by 20%, great for trash killing. Farm build, awesome. Are there any speed things you can put in here, maybe? There's not really anything else you can do with this. Like, if you're worried about survivability, Nerves of Steel, but you're going to sacrifice a hell of toughness and a hell of damage for that Nerves of Steel. Say the Brood of Bulkathos, you can switch it for Ruthless, which would probably help if you've got no cooldown reduction issues. For example, my build right now, 29% cooldown. Really, I want closer to 40% cooldown. The cooldown is terrible on this build, despite how good some of the gear is. So you've got to compensate lack of two evils here. So I'm using that just for the extra cooldown. So I've got Permanent Wrath of the Berserker uptown, which is what I want, especially in synergy with the Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac in the cube. And Ignore Pain. Say at the moment, don't have a Rachel's Ring of Larceny. I'm waiting for one to drop for that when you scare your enemies, 60% increased movement speed for 4 seconds. So I'm using Sprint because we're not doing any spells, talents, passive skills that actually proc Band of Might, which I've got equipped. And it's literally there just as a stat boost because it's got crit, a socket and strength in it. So it does the job for now. Say I don't want to talk about gear too much, it's more about the spells. Say Ignore Pain can be swapped out with Battle Rage, and you can pick which one you want because obviously it increases your armor. Wrath of Berserker is a necessity. Rend is a necessity because if you want to cause enemies to bleed, increased damage, AoE damage is always good. Not necessarily needed, but I'm using Warcry. Rally increases armor for your allies by 20% for 120 seconds. You know what? I'm going to switch about here as well. So I'm using Warcry here. I don't need increased armor. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to swap that right now for Battle Rage Swords of Plowshares. Because I'm messing around with this build as much as everyone else. Oh, I'm on cooldown because I just clicked it. Because this is just a farm build now, isn't it? So critical hits heal you and your pets. I don't want that. I want increased movement speed. So Battle Rage Ferocity for increased movement speed. Because I'm using this as just a farm build. I'm never going to push with this. It's not worth it because the other build I'm using, which is the Rare Core Boulder Toss build, is much more powerful, which I'll go through those guides at another day. Got to try and get on Twitch as well. I've got the Twitter on the go, which is Roth_Diablo. Like, comment, subscribe. Any questions, don't hesitate to ask me. But just press the subscribe button and follow it on and just see what's going on. Some of it might help you, some of it you might have heard before from other people, but there's always something new that I'm going to pop into these little videos just to different variations of different builds, which might not be as obvious to some people as they should be. Catch you later. Have a lovely weekend, everyone.